perhaps many of the regulations and laws around this pandemic are influenced by our attitudes towards death. How is this pandemic affecting our attitudes towards death? Are we facing up to the inevitability of life? And do you like this hat?
Social distancing rules mean hardly anyone can attend a funeral now. Maybe 10 people at most, all 2 meters apart. Cremations are closed to the public. Only a small number of mourners are allowed at graveside burials. Some funerals are now being streamed online.
I've been to 2 funerals in the pandemic, one for my mate Jeff's dad and one for my uncle Jimmy. Funerals are weird. Have you been to one in the pandemic? In America, I know they're doing like sort of drive-thrus and there's a lot of online funerals, but I feel the function of a funeral is a kind of ceremonial theatre for us to acknowledge and show love and respect and to demonstrate support to those that are left behind. Stripped of this ability, where do we place death in our story of ourselves?
When you scroll down the Mission Funeral Homes Facebook page, you may see something you have never seen before. A funeral on Facebook Live.
On my podcast, Under the Skin, Charles Eisenstein talked about death and death becoming a taboo subject and how our attitudes towards death were being highlighted by the current pandemic. Ours is a society of death denial, from its hiding away of corpses to its fetish for youthfulness, to its warehousing of old people in nursing homes. Against the backdrop of the programme of control, death denial and separate self, the assumption that public policy should seek to minimise the number of deaths is nearly beyond question, a goal to which other values like play, freedom, etc. are subordinate. COVID-19 offers occasion to broaden that view. Yes, let's hold life sacred, more sacred than ever. Death teaches us that. Let us hold each person, young or old, sick or well, as the sacred, precious, beloved being that they are. And in the circle of our hearts, let's make room for other sacred values too. To hold life sacred is not just to live long, it is to live well and right and fully. It's interesting to hear someone talk about our attitudes towards death, our inability to accept death, and how deeply embedded they are in our systemic ideologies. These ideals are so entrenched that it's impossible for us to see what our values are and how they affect the way we approach something like this year's events.
Now, the latest CDC report shows higher numbers of people are in mental health crisis and thinking about suicide alongside the pandemic.
London Ambulance shared information that crews are now attending an average of 37 suicides or attempted suicides per day, compared to 22 per day in 2019. Suicide is obviously a very difficult and challenging subject, particularly in a culture like ours that seems to have more and more taboos around death and a deepening inability to discuss this topic.
Well, I was in here for 13 minutes already. I've just been on my phone the whole time. Listening to some Russell Brand. Alright, so I'm trying to figure out like different ways of advertising. I might have to get a fucking TikTok. I don't want to do TikTok, but apparently it's like the new thing, so.
Our reverence for death and our rituals around death are one of the means that we use to diagnose whether or not we even have a civil society. We identify Bronze Age, Dark Age tribes, but oh look, they buried their dead. What will future archaeologists think when they glance back to the dystopia we are currently being encouraged to inhabit?
So without ever leaving their cars, mourners paid their respects from a respectful 6-foot distance.
David Kessler, the grief expert, speaking on my podcast Under the Skin, said, in the past, hearses were constantly seen driving around the city. You've not been behind a hearse in a long time because now hearses only take a body, he's talking about in the United States, from the chapel to the graveside. The dead move around our cities in white unmarked vans. We've sanitised the experience of death. If you want to see death, you've got to watch a movie or a series about it. There was a time when death was in your house. You watched your loved ones die up close, the same way you have weddings and you have deaths. We don't see death anymore. We forget things like the coffee table in the living room was literally there so we could put the death casket on it. That's what it was built for. If you look at old houses in the 40s, they have wide doors so the casket could be moved in and out.
Have you ever eaten a polygraph? Have you ever lied? No. I've had a lot of inconclusive. You do not want to completely rely on the polygraph. I've seen it fail miserably. It can be beaten if you feel no difference between right and wrong.
prevailing cultural ideologies is that we have, as David Kessler says, sanitized the experience of death, taken death out from the center of our lives so that we can have this illusion of ongoing life. And the people that live at the very pinnacle of human culture, what's their attitude towards death? How are they living life? How are they tackling this immutable problem? As Kessler said, the death rate for human beings is 100%. We're still surprised by death, but it's going to happen to all of us. Or is it?
The ultra-wealthy in Silicon Valley are investing money into companies trying to answer exactly those questions.
A number of billionaires have pumped money into research that aims to keep people fighting fit as they age. Google founders Sergey Brin and Larry Page have pumped millions into Calico, a secretive health venture which aims to solve death.
There's also BioAge, BioViva, the Longevity Fund, AgeX, the Methuselah Foundation, and many others.
Methuselah, the oldest person out of the Bible, lived for 969 years. It's interesting to cite the Bible because really what I imagine is meant by people living a long time in a biblical and spiritual context is the idea of embracing a permanent, constant, transcendent aspect of human nature. The idea of even empathy, of becoming so identified with your values that the death of the body is insignificant. Not keep the body alive forever in a jar while the world burns.
Richest man in the world, Jeff Bezos, and billionaire PayPal co-founder Peter Thiel, they're both invested in the space.
It's interesting, isn't it, to see how stratification is becoming so extreme that there are now members of our society who can remove themselves from the ultimate, unavoidable factor in all our lives, death itself. I find it curious that in this pandemic, funerals, a ceremony as old as our species, or at least as old as the civilizing impulse within our species, are being negated, marginalized, made technological, or forgotten altogether. Meanwhile, I suspect suicide is on the rise, people bringing about death as a solution to their own problem of simply being alive, and elsewhere, billionaires and a coterie of privileged folk are creating solutions to that problem. I suppose I'm collating these ideas to show how our attitudes are changing and how our experience of reality is changing and how we're becoming further and further removed from the type of lives we are evolved to have, further from the beings that we have long been.
Right now in San Francisco, for $8,000, you can get a liter of blood from 16 to 25-year-olds injected into your body.
I mean, that's just a literal bit of vampirism there. But when you get to the point where you're buying up child blood, don't you think, yeah, I might want to try some meditation and having a little look in the mirror. I can't look in that mirror. Give me another glass of child blood. I'm a good guy.
Bulletproof founder Dave Asprey has spent more than $1 million hacking his own biology.
I, right now, am expecting to live to about 180. I think that's very achievable, assuming a truck doesn't hit me.
To make sense of this, you have to take it out of the broader context. The context is a world where some people are suffering such extraordinary lives. Even what we would class as ordinary existence has become such a macabre parody of drive-through funerals. Suicide likely rising, that it seems odd that in that same physical space, peculiar and luxurious ideas like this are being seriously explored.
Whenever you meet a fundamental human need, there's a market. And in this case, the market for age-related disease and aging is $1 trillion market.
Everything a market now, huh? Everything a market. The defiance of death a market. Challenging though, because thinking for myself, oh, there's some treatment I could get that would mean I could spend more time with my children. Any one of us will take it. I suppose that's the risk. Unless we develop a value system based on timeless, perennial principles, integrity, honour, love, kindness, then it's unbearable to live in the material world. Death is unbearable. The loss of loved ones becomes unbearable. Decay, aging, all these things become unbearable unless we prioritise different values. This, I think, is what we are experiencing now. We've lost our connection to the unknowable, to the beauty of life, that which can never be understood rationally and logically. We've pushed it out into the margins. We've prioritised materialism and rationalism to a degree where we now have no connection to beauty, to things that are very, very hard to know but very easy to feel. This is what funerals do, is they connect us in a way that's difficult to quantify or make sense of, but we recognise that life is a shared experience, death is a shared experience, that even though we've lost someone, we continue, and they live on in our memories, they live on in our love. The reason you get people ending their own life, alienation, despair. The reason you get billionaires prolonging their life, no acknowledgement of the sacred. It's the same problem throughout this system. Not only do we need to find ways of reviving the ceremonies around death, we need to experience them again in a renewed way, revivify them, awaken to them, awaken to a life worthy of death, live a life with real meaning, celebrate values that are not just about acquisition and personal excellence, but about shared excellence, shared growth, togetherness.
From selling dietary supplements to stem cell injections, there is already a huge amount of money being made.
These are all things that I'm attracted to, but what I think when I see that is, oh my God, I want that stuff, but then I think, hold on. Accept reality, accept death, accept the sadness of losing people that you love. And I suppose by connecting to that love, experiencing that love, you can transcend the fear of knowing, oh, I'm getting older, I'm not going to be young forever, I'm not young anymore, everyone I love is going to die. If we don't make a place at the table for reality, for death, for the sacredness in impermanence, then we are doomed to create, even in areas of scientific endeavour, a kind of shadow world, an ugly dystopia.
The biggest concern for many is that anti-aging interventions are being developed as a tool for the wealthy. Investment in such research by the ultra-rich can be seen as trying to buy the one thing money hasn't yet been able to buy them: immortality.
None of us want to die, or, those of us that do are presumed to be unwell, but all of us must learn to accept death, accept our own death and the death of one another. Perhaps whether you believe in God or you don't, this can certainly create an environment where we celebrate and love life while we're here, while we revere and honour one another, where we revere life itself, rather than continually refining our focus to personal advancement.
This utopian dream of living forever, and I do believe that the anti-aging proponents are not just interested in adding another 10 or 20 years to their lifespan. They're really looking for immortality, but it is a narcissistic dream, because I have yet to hear a single social good that will bring.
If you've lost someone during the pandemic, either because they've taken their own life or because they've died of coronavirus or related causes or anything, the solution perhaps is to journey within yourself, to look at your own values, to connect with people in a different way, to enjoy life differently when enjoying life becomes plausible and possible. And even now, I was told by a wise elder, focus on the things that you can do, not the things you can't do. Certainly, my feelings are that if we create a fairer society that isn't entirely organised around the further augmentation of the privilege of a few, that more of us will be able to enjoy life and accept death, accept the inevitability of death, and accept the beauty and pain of life. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please like, subscribe, share, and if you want more raw, unedited information from me, please go to russellbrand.com and sign up to become a member of our online community. Then there'll be nothing between us. Thank you.
I don't think that's a good angle. You guys are up early. I'm trying to figure figure out the best place to set this camera. So I'm gonna be working on this a little more. Oh, nice. Yeah, it's like 6 o'clock in the morning where I'm at. So I'm working on the, trying to get the fabric in the background right now. And so I want to work on this lower part of the fabric here. It's underneath. It has like a purplish tint to it. So we're gonna try to work on that for a minute and get that part done. And then later on today we can start working on detailing the bottle. And just try to find something to watch or listen to real quick. Let's see.
If you live in a qualified zip code, you may be eligible to receive handmade solar panels for no cost at install and get paid more than $2,039 after.
You watched the machines approach. Then you watched them through the roof. Everyone was live streaming, calling for help, recording evidence. But little was getting through. The internet was largely obscene. The drones were fully autonomous weapons. They first appeared in a distant war zone, leveling a town and disappearing anonymously. Outrage turned to fear and competition. Unlike nuclear weapons, the machines were cheap to mass produce. Huge fleets emerged in a rapid chain reaction, a new arms race of autonomous weapons. Tanks and drones on every side. Ships and submarines swarming the ocean. The only defense governments could muster was to get the machines more control, so they could move faster over greater distances. The world was a timber, no management. And as the fleets grew, so did the fear and paranoia. After a fleet was hacked, some machines were sealed off from any communication. These were the most infamous weapons, and they couldn't be.
I might be able to use this one instead.
More autonomy meant more devastating mistakes. And there was no accountability, no justice for victims. Ever faster machines meant the first strike could be the last. And the smallest advantage offered the prospect of victory without risking.
Let's use this one instead.
The barrier to war slid away.
Crown Boys, what up?
The incentive to strike first intensified. The anonymous spy barely registered on radar. It was a sniper drone, firing from miles away before diving into the sea.
Alright, this one might be a little better.
Tensions grew. The world order fractured, and fault lines erupted. A web of fear.
Because we're only going to be working on the bottom half right here, so.
Strikes worked its way.
Hey, ain't nothing else to do at this time of the day, bro.
You noticed a lone enemy soldier.
Chill mode.
You both watched as a drone leveled a building. I was here.
have to put this up a little bit more. That might be high enough, I guess.
No country gave up until the deaths became unbearable. The grim threshold for victory was the same. You thought of how soldiers had stopped fighting at Christmas during the First World War.
I hope that's good enough.
And how they had stopped to save a horse that was tangled in wire. Now civilians were left to die. Just one soldier, another useless witness. As the drone closed in, he shouted, "Children here!" It felt like a statement for the record. If the drone was hit, it turned away. He couldn't wait. The machines were the hate, fear.
Alright, so I got 2 streams going right now. I got the YouTube stream and the Instagram stream. Oh shit, no. Let me plug this phone up to the charger so this shit don't die. I'll probably be in here for like 50 minutes to an hour real quick. I might go to the gym, but the gym doesn't open until 7, so I figured I might as well just come in here and paint until the gym opens. Alright, so if we can hold it right there like that, I think. Let me move this out the way. Alright, I think I'm good to paint right now. But whatever I just selected to listen to was some bullshit. Let me find something else to listen to real quick. Skyrim Unreal Engine 5. Yo, people will not stop modding Skyrim, yo. The game is like 10 years old now.
Protect your pet this flea and tick season.
Okay, I can't help it. I gotta see Skyrim in on the Unreal Engine. Let's see what this looks like.
Unreal Engine is amazing, and it is always developing. We have always got our eyes out for amazing demos that show us where graphics are going in video games.
Alright, so we're gonna, well, there's actually a little bit back here. Can you guys see that? No? So there's a little bit behind this cup here I want to do, but mostly I want to focus on the part of the fabric here and underneath the bottom.
That's fake, except for the fact that the rain is a little heavy. The details in the grass, the way the soil has absorbed water, it's genuinely a work of art. At number 19 is demonstration of a feature called Nanite. If you're unaware, it's a means of replicating and implementing services by programming rather than by modeling all of it, and it allows for you to have a lot more on screen at any given time. Someone by the name of Tabasco Dev used Nanite in Unreal Engine 5 to put 25 million hamburgers onto the screen on a low-end PC, just to demonstrate how incredible this type of thing is. Now, it's not as though it runs perfect or anything, but considering it's a low-end PC with a frankly stupid amount of hamburgers on screen, and that it's not chugging along as though it is the end times, is extremely impressive. At number 18 is this architecture channel that is just doing this amazing interior work. It's a channel that started as Unreal Engine 4 architecture.
Yeah, I hate when people be like, oh, oil paints take so long to dry. I'm like, man, I just put this blue paint on there last night, and this shit is already fucking drying up and getting tacky. Now I gotta get more fucking blue paint, because this shit dried overnight. That should take forever to dry. It really doesn't. Only some. Oh, that's crazy, yeah. Only some colors take a long time to dry. But like this Prussian blue, man, this shit to dry in a fucking a day. Like what the fuck? I just put that paint on there 6 hours ago, 7 hours ago. Okay, probably a little bit longer. Let's say 10 hours ago. But still, that shit is dry in like 10 hours. That's crazy. Alright, coming with some more Prussian blue here. So I use blue and red to make my own purple for this canvas. I do have like a nice purple that I like to use, but for these shadows, I'll just mix some blues in here to get these purple shadows I want. Oh shit, I ran out of white. This nigga is doing bad this morning, bro. Doing bad. And I'm getting low on white paint, so I might have to re-up on this today. I don't know why I just didn't put both of my gloves on. And I got my fucking paint on me early in the fucking morning. Shit. Now we added some white and some blue. Let's see what we can make happen.
Because if you remember, there were lots of demos that came out showing how good Unreal can handle interiors. Well, it can do it better now. This architecture channel made this demo called UE5 ArcViz Lighting Test, just showing various different types of lighting in a home setting, and frankly, it just looks like a bunch of photography. I mean, if you didn't see them playing around with the various aspects of it, I think that you would not be able to distinguish this from a photograph if you were not specifically someone extremely familiar with 3D modeling. Just all the various materials, the linoleum, the cloth, the plastic, how everything refracts and interacts with light. It's just shocking that this can be done in real time. This looks more real than any computer-generated film from the last several decades. And number 17 is a test from Anne Vu, designed to test out two various features. First, Nanite, which we talked about a little already. Nanite being a feature that allows for a lot of different stuff to be on screen without taxing the system so much. Anne Vu talking about having a fairly mediocre graphics card and running this thing off of a hard drive, not a solid state, claiming that this thing should have at least a few billion polygons, and the ray tracing lumens just looks insane. And number 16 is a test from HAL 00117 showing us Skyrim in Unreal Engine 5, and just wow. It's the Western Watchtower, just retextured with all of this nature around it. Flowing cloth flags, beautiful lighting effects, weather. It makes you think, wow, if only they'd stop using that damn creation engine. Because it really is beautiful to see something so familiar, so iconic in the world of gaming, as an area of Skyrim looking this good. I mean, seriously, just look at the lighting and the shadows. There's just nothing like that in Skyrim. Apparently, this one uses nanite and displacement maps. Everything is apparently a primitive object, which is kind of insane. And number 15 is this K70 Soviet Moto, motorcycle, old-timey one, on a desert background, sort of in a low light situation, where we see the light on, and we see the various rocks and sort of dry plants of a desert. Again, I think that to the untrained eye, this can be very indistinguishable from a photo, until you get a little bit close, where you can see, and I don't think this is a limitation of the engine at all, but that some of the objects on the bike are a little bit lower polygon than you might expect. But even going further back, you can't even tell. Just the way everything reacts so naturally is so impressive here. The artist is Ostap Gordon, and really it is a beautiful example of how incredible this thing can look. And number 14 is another one from Ostap Gordon. This is an ancient temple designed to test the limits of lumen and nanite, which gives us this truly amazing natural looking structure combined with what looks like very old stonework, and the way that light handles itself in this situation, thanks to Lumen, just makes it feel like you're looking at video footage from somebody exploring some old place that they're just entering for the first time. You have overgrowth, you have this reflecting light that's just like overexposing itself on the camera. It really just looks like real.
Have you ever eaten a polygraph? Have you ever lied? No. I've had a lot of inconclusive. You do not want to completely rely on the polygraph. I've seen it fail miserably. It can be beaten if you feel no...
And number 13 is what Melheim Sphere calls a nanite overload. They're running an RTX 3070, so it's obviously a hefty card, but they take these Megascans assets, which, if you're not familiar, are these objects scanned from real life, and apply a little gravity simulation on some rocks to make it so that they fall and create motion in the scene. But what Melheim Sphere is highlighting here is that you can literally have billions of polygons at no cost. I mean, this is a consumer PC running in real time what looks like something that would be frankly high quality enough to be in a 3D animated film easily. At number 12, you are not looking at some of the most beautiful footage of mountains you've ever seen. You are looking at a computer simulation. You knew that already because these various demonstrations are some of the most impressive graphical things. But this is, to me, one of the best. In terms of weather, particles, polygons, simulations of rocks, and other age-old nature elements, I mean, it is incredible. Just with the snow and the depth of field that they're using to give the impression of life going on it's just, I mean, most people never actually get to see one of these environments up close, and you can just be like, alright, well here, let's just play around in an open world environment, or whatever. I would absolutely love to see more games set in these types of environments. At number 11 is another interior test. This one a little bit smaller of a space, but utilizing light a little bit more. Frankly, this is a very normal looking apartment for somebody who has a little bit of extra money living in like Manhattan or something. So while most of us are jealous, even though it's a tiny little space, it's also not out of this world and shows us how well this incredible engine can handle such normal stuff. For good measure, they've even just got a laptop on a table to show you just how normal stuff can look. And frankly, if somebody just told me this was shots of an apartment, I would just believe it. At number 10 is something a little bit different than anything we've looked at so far. A demo from Storm S showing us Pilot Trey, which shows us a pilot in some type of a ship doing calculations or, you know, whatever. And then it shows us a city, a very futuristic one, with lots of ships and beautiful, incredible ray traced reflections. I mean, frankly, it is just a really, really cool build-up of an area of Chicago with some utopian buildings. It's really neat. At number 9, it's a similar test to the cheeseburger test, this one by Pink Pocket TV. Frankly, one that actually is a little bit more impressive because of the polygon composition of a donut compared to that of a hamburger. Frankly, sprinkles are a lot more complex than the top of a hamburger, but still, someone made a script that spawns a million donuts, and it does not slow down the engine at all. It's just like, fine, check out all these donuts. And number 8 is a Lumen and Nanite test from IRAM Gamer, which shows us some military vehicles in desert situations with some various types of lighting. Frankly, there are times that it's hard for me to believe I am looking at a real-time simulation. But on top of that, like, to be frank, it's actually just a cool-looking thing. Beautiful photography of military equipment, which I don't normally consider to be the most incredible subject for photography, done in all these varying types of light that really brings forward this texture and feeling of use. At number 7 is this quote-unquote quick test, where Saga Design sat down and spent an hour sketching out a place to test out Lumen, to show us lighting. But in truth, let's just talk about how beautiful this thing is that this person made in an hour. This tree and the cherry blossoms and the grass and the soft golden lighting, as well as the shadow on all of the rocks behind it. This is incredible. If I came across this in a game and it just looked like this in a spot, I'd be like, Jesus, how are we here? This is incredible. At number 6, Eye of Attach gives us a reason to put a damn seatbelt on the airplane. Holy crap, it's a plane crash simulation, and Unreal 5 not only makes it look cool as hell, but also terrifies the ever-loving crap out of me. I will never take my seatbelt off in a plane again. I do not want to be any of those people. At number 5, Burza Games gives us a nanite and lumen test, which gives us this totally otherworldly environment. Kind of a glass underground city, or chrome, or something very reflective with a ton of polygons. That's all that really matters. I don't know if I'd call it cyberpunk, but I don't know if I'd not call it cyberpunk. It reminds me very much of traditional architecture, maybe some Middle Eastern architecture, but it's all reflective, and it's all got this sort of disco ball thing going. I don't know. It's insane, whatever it is. It's also a billion plus polygons, with all of that reflection and light stuff going on. Just wow. At number 4 is a demo by Christian Dolby, which shows us an apartment out on the desert, and it is frankly shocking how real it looks. Part of the reason it looks so good is that the interior of the apartment that the shot starts in is imperfect. There's signs of wear, the materials are very rustic, the doors are kind of messed up, the walls got cracks in it, and it's just basically selling it. It is a beautiful image, and amazing that it's happening in real time. At number 3 is an amazing jungle scene, labeled a tropical hillside, in a demo by Melheim Sphere. What's really so astounding about this one is just the sheer amount of detail there is. Honestly, it kind of reminds me of the feeling I got jumping into the jungle in Crysis way back in the day, because it is that level of increase in my expectation in terms of graphics. Again, it's nanite and lumen that are causing these things, and it's amazing. At number 2, Scion T Design remade, or rather made something inspired by Silent Hill, and showed us both nighttime and daytime environments for it, and it is incredible. I would kill to play the Silent Hill game this guy is envisioning. What this thing looks like in different lighting, too, just demonstrates how insane lighting can be in the Unreal Engine. We get beautiful nature, worn out but not particularly scary town, and then we roll in that fog, and it's just terrifying. Someone put this guy in charge of one of these games. I would absolutely take that. And finally, at number 1 is a demo from Victor Ullmann called Demon's Game. Now, this is by far one of the coolest things I've ever seen. It looks like something out of Dark Souls or something along those lines, but the environment is so detailed. On a level of something we just haven't seen before, but you throw in this candlelight with all these puddles on the floor and refracting liquids on stone, with the chains all over. It is just a sight to be seen. Playing through something that looks like this would be insane. When I was little, I could have never imagined seeing something like this even made by computers, let alone being a real-time simulation. You could, in theory, have a game inside. But what do you think? Leave us a comment, let us know. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so please subscribe. And don't forget to enable all notifications. As always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I am Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter, @FalconTheHero. We'll see you next time, right here on GameRanks.
Protect your pet this flea and tick season with Chewy. Find everything from flea collars and sprays to prescriptions that keep pests away. Chewy has what you need to keep tails wagging and pets itch-free all season long.
Shortly after becoming president of the United Arab Republic, the late Gamal Abdel Nasser required a colossal 80-foot statue to be transported from the desert to a park in Cairo. The figure had been enduring for innumerable centuries near the legendary Step Pyramid. An array of technicians and workers descended on it, equipped with all manner of tractors and enormous cranes. They grappled with the plan for weeks, first confused, then irritated, and ultimately humbled by the revelation that contemporary technology simply could not move the gigantic piece of stone. This asked the even more difficult question, how had the ancient Egyptians transferred the statue into position to begin with? Scientists have been bickering for years about the techniques employed by the early stonemasons. Some idiotic opinions have not only been proposed, but have been generally received as the answer. Then, with hardly any evidence, the theory becomes fact, and mystery is regarded as solved. Nobody asks questions. There are over 300 pyramids in Egypt alone. Many of the Egyptian pyramids were previously used as internment rooms for pharaohs. However, the Great Pyramid at Giza was never used for this purpose, and no one has any indication of why it was created. Some of the enormous stones used in these edifices and in the famous temples found around Egypt were clearly brought from quarries hundreds of miles away. The current archaeological opinion is that these stones were floated up the Nile on rafts and later moved into position on wooden rollers. Considering some of these blocks weighed between 50 to 70 tons each, this implies that the Egyptians would have had to build enormous rafts capable of displacing over 50 tons of water to float them. Otherwise, they would have sunk to the bottom of the riverbed. The Egyptians were not known for their shipbuilding, and no indication of these super rafts has ever been discovered. There are other problems with these theories. We were told that tens of thousands of slaves were thrust into pyramid construction throughout specific periods of each year. This directs us to the difficulty of logistics. It would require a complex plan just to feed these hundreds of thousands every day. Numerous modern builders and specialists have applied their slide rules to the puzzle, and the most liberal estimation of the time needed to create the Great Pyramid is 600 years. Surprisingly, although the early Egyptians left detailed accounts of everything else, no one has ever discovered even a single piece of papyrus depicting the planning or construction of these massive monuments. The stones were carved and prepared with such precision that a piece of paper cannot be inserted between them. Clearly, those ancient stonemasons were magnificent craftsmen, and clearly there were plenty of them in order to undertake and achieve such immense tasks. When a conundrum can't be logically explained by science, factions develop who formulate their own solutions. Our lost continent theorists typically recognize that the Egyptians didn't create the pyramids at all. UFO enthusiasts claim they were built by spacefaring people. Morris K. Jessup, an astrophysicist and a student of urology, evaluated the mystery and suggested, levitation is the only possible explanation. I believe that this lifting machine was a spaceship of vast proportions, that it supplied the heavy lift power for erecting great stoneworks, and that it was abruptly terminated or taken elsewhere. Such a hypothesis would underwrite the movements of stone over which scientists and technicians have pondered. This presents us with a glorious contradiction. If any super society in the sky had the technology to create a spaceship of huge proportions and guide it all the way to our humble planet, why would they find it necessary to fiddle about with stone blocks? If they needed to leave behind proof of their stay, they did a miserable job of it, for we have never figured out the true purpose of these monoliths. Couldn't they have carved a nice little note for us inside the Great Pyramid describing the whole thing in 76 languages? The only carvings discovered inside the Great Pyramid are a few small scratches in the roof of the upper chamber, which archaeologists view as stonemason marks. Similar marks have been found in other constructions. People have been puzzled by the Great Pyramid for thousands of years. It has never really been properly dated, and it could be vastly older than what has been stated. Whoever created it was so skillful that innumerable efforts to find an entrance met with failure for thousands of years. Eventually, in AD 820, the Caliph al-Ma'mun started a full-scale attack on the edifice, expecting to locate treasure-filled rooms. His men hacked away at it, heating the stones with fires, and then cooling them abruptly by splashing vinegar over them. Gradually, the stones split, and they worked their way into the pyramid until they came upon a passageway. It was entirely empty. They discovered a larger passageway known as the Grand Gallery, which leads upwards to two small chambers. The lower chamber's entrance is so minute you would have to crawl on your hands and knees to enter it. The upper room contains nothing but a crude stone tub, which really doesn't relate to the elaborately created sarcophagi used by the ancient Egyptians to entomb their royalty. The total absence of hieroglyphics and artifacts has provided historians plenty to think about. Some have speculated that the pyramid was used as a grain elevator, and that wheat was measured out in the crude stone tub. Others have attempted to find astronomical importance to it. In the mid-19th century, pyramidology was flourishing. An author named John Taylor wrote a book in which he reasoned that the whole purpose of the construction was to preserve Egyptian measurements. He was followed by the cosmologist Charles Piazzi Smith, who extended this idea to introduce past and future prophecies. He surveyed every inch of the pyramid, inside and out, and every angle. In 1864, Smith published a 600-page book describing his theories, and it provoked an uproar in archaeological circles for years afterward. A small but devoted group of followers are still trying to verify his now thoroughly discredited theories. Apart from some notable population centers, ancient Egypt was a mud hut culture. The masses lived undernourished lives in grinding poverty. The skills required for technological projects were rare, yet somehow they managed to quarry those enormous stones, transport them, and put them into place with geometric precision. We know that the Egyptians did build many other pyramids, plus several great temples and tombs which are still standing. But why would they build the Great Pyramid? Many people have theorized about the Great Pyramid of Giza and what its purpose or function really was. One researcher, Christopher Dunn, strongly believes that the Great Pyramid of Giza was nothing less than an ancient power plant that provided ancient Egypt with electricity. When studied in a little more detail, as speculative as this hypothesis is, the idea that the Pyramid of Giza was an ancient power plant starts to sound a little less crazy than you might think. The Great Pyramid was encased with white tufa limestone. This particular limestone has high insulating properties and, perhaps more importantly, does not contain any traces of magnesium, meaning it will not conduct electricity. This would have prevented electricity from escaping from inside the structure uncontrollably. The dolomite limestone used on the inner casing of the pyramid contains traces of crystals and other conductive metals. These properties allowed power to be transferred at its maximum effect. Inside the pyramid, granite is used within the King's Chamber, the Queen's Chamber, the Grand Gallery, and the shafts that connect them all. There are also several granite tombs that have been discovered at various locations. According to Dunn...
Wow, this is only the second time I've heard somebody break that down as simple as they can do it. The pyramids are purposely constructed from different types of material. Yes, it's all rock and stone, but very, very different types of stone. And the stones are used in very specific areas of the pyramid. And they're arranged in a certain way. Like you said, some stones are magnetic and some stones don't conduct electricity and others do. And other stones have high quartz levels or high crystal levels, and it's like, these motherfuckers, that shit was some type of machine, yo. The Great Pyramid was some type of fucking machine. I don't know, it's so fucking weird. But that's one thing, people just think, oh, it's all mud bricks or it's all like one type of stone they use, and it's like, no. They used several different types of building materials in a very specific manner. And now what was it able to produce? We're not really sure, but we know like these motherfuckers understood the different properties or the the different makeup and composition of the materials that they built this structure out of. I gotta go back and hear this again, because like I said, I forgot where I heard it from the first time, or maybe I read it somewhere. I don't know, but a lot of people don't even acknowledge that fact that the pyramid is made up of a lot of different stuff.
Christopher Dunn strongly believes that the Great Pyramid of Giza was nothing less
That's
than an ancient
him. He is the guy. I really think, Christopher Dunn. I believe he was. I either heard him in a lecture or heard him do an interview with somebody. But yeah, Christopher Dunn.
That provided ancient Egypt with electricity. When studied in a little more detail, as speculative as this hypothesis is, the idea that the Pyramid of Giza was an ancient power plant starts to sound a little less crazy than you might think. The Great Pyramid was encased with white tufa limestone. This particular limestone has high insulating properties and, perhaps more importantly, does not contain any traces of magnesium, meaning it will not conduct electricity. This would have prevented electricity from escaping from inside the structure uncontrollably. The dolomite limestone used on the inner casing of the pyramid contains traces of crystals and other conductive metals. These properties allowed power to be transferred at its maximum effect. Inside the pyramid, granite is used within the King's Chamber, the Queen's Chamber, the Grand Gallery, and the shafts that connect them all. There are also several granite tombs that have been discovered at various locations. According to Dunn, these are more likely conductors. This granite was found to have a makeup of 55% silicon quartz crystal and has radioactive properties that can ionize the air around it.
Did you know that you could cook pizzas in just 60 seconds? You heard that right. Introducing the Unicoda 12 gas-powered pizza oven. Coda 12 is hot, like 950 degrees Fahrenheit hot. Cooking pizza in 60 seconds kind of hot. It's out of the box easy.
Particularly when they resonate. They have been positioned inside the King's Chamber in such a way so as to amplify and increase the resonance of the room. Water erosion inside the pyramid. Dunn argues that the main reason the pyramids were built next to a vast and plentiful water supply was so the Egyptians could use the water from the Nile inside the pyramid. This would assist in producing energy as it would be used in any modern-day power plant. The ancient Egyptians were proficient at reading the Nile's water levels and employing sophisticated systems to dam and run water to the desired place.
Yo, that's the thing, bro. That we know they had the knowledge of electrical power somehow. But that's how amazing that the culture is. Okay, so no matter when the original Egyptian civilization started, because like now we're really just pushing it back further and further once Robert Schoch started looking at the Sphinx. And so we're at this, I mean, and this has been in the 90s. So for like 20 years or better, we've been trying to push this date back further, but we've already dated, the Sphinx and the Giza Plateau over 100 years ago. And so this is kind of stuck with people for generations now that, they're only roughly the original builders in. What fascinates me the most is how long it took to acquire that level of knowledge. It took thousands of years to acquire that level of knowledge before you could implement it on such a grand scale. And so then you have to push like the human story even further and further back, yo. It's like, man, we've been doing this shit for a long ass time, yo. We've been doing this for a long time.
Made under the Great Pyramid would appear to reinforce this theory somewhat. As well as evidence suggesting extensive water erosion being found inside the pyramid, There has also been discovered a subterranean chamber, itself awash with distinct signs of extensive water erosion. This subterranean chamber has been theorized to essentially be a hydraulic pump system, which was intentionally flooded to create a pulse and force its way to the king's chamber via the main shaft. This pulse would then cause the king's chamber to resonate, with the granite beams in place to take advantage of this and begin converting the energy into power. Evidence of repeated chemical reaction in shafts and chambers. During the Queen's chamber research, it seemed quite apparent to Dunn that a chemical reaction took place within this part of the pyramid. There was a salt residue upon the walls, which suggested this reaction was repeated many, many times. This, coupled with its position below the king's chamber, implied that the aim was to create hydrogen in the Queen's chamber, which would then move upward and react with other chemicals and energies. In the shafts that led into the chambers, and in the chambers themselves, they found traces of hydrated zinc chloride and dilute hydrochloric acid. According to Dunn, these chemicals would have been released down the relevant shafts where they would meet in the Queen's chamber, with the reaction essentially creating electrical energy. When the iRobot was cleared to explore the Guttenbrink door in 2002, most observers simply saw another door with damaged hooks on it. Nevertheless, Dunn argued that this looked to be an additional proof of the pyramid being used to create energy, and that the hooks were, in fact, the remains of a type of plug, complete with anode and cathode. Dunn said that one of the hooks, the cathode, had evidence of electroplating and was glazed in copper. The additional hook, which Dunn declared was the anode, seemed to have a white substance on it. This, he concluded, was due to continued exposure to zinc. Dunn also cites particular crystal linings in certain shafts within the structure that act as a way of resonating the vibrations to harness the energy. Also, filters in specific locations would allow only the desired frequency to enter certain chambers. The Grand Gallery. When Dunn was permitted to film inside the Grand Gallery while on one of his field studies, he discovered that it was also made of granite and not limestone, as had been previously thought. The granite would be better suited if this room's purpose was to be the center point of a power source, which Dunn now strongly believed it was. This discovery all but confirmed to him that his hypothesis was correct, even more so when he saw scorch marks at strategic locations throughout the room, implying that connections had been present here and that a reaction with a vast source of heat had occurred. When he followed an imaginary line from these scorch marks, he noticed that they all seemed to head towards a center point in the center of the room. Once a comprehensive study was carried out inside the Great Gallery, there seemed to be clear evidence of extreme heat or blast marks, almost as if there had been a powerful explosion. Dunn concluded there had been. He emphasized that the reason the Great Pyramid was ultimately sealed up was to keep the energy confined inside the pyramid in the aftermath of a discharge. Sequentially, only additional studies will prove this hypothesis one way or the other. Still, if these majestic structures' purpose was to act as a power station way back in antiquity, then it would compel us to not only re-evaluate the past, but rewrite it.
Had to take a bathroom break. Yeah. But I think I'm gonna try to get to a good little stopping point right here. So I go hit the gym real quick. Fuel my day. And then I'll come back and probably pay him a little more. You know? Let me see if this will work. Alright, I think I can stop right there. Alright, I'm out of here. I'll be back later. When everybody gets up. It was too early for people.